In the glittering world of Miami's art scene, where million-dollar paintings hang alongside deadly secrets, one man turned murder into his masterpiece. He craved the spotlight, orchestrated every detail for maximum media attention, and believed himself to be the perfect killer. But in his desperate hunger for fame, he overlooked one simple fact that would become his undoing. This is the story of how an obsession with attention led to the most chilling case Detective Isabella Varga had ever encountered. The morning sun cast long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Ashworth Gallery, but the light couldn't penetrate the darkness that had settled over Miami's most prestigious art space. At exactly 9:47 a.m., gallery assistant Aria Blackwood pushed through the heavy glass doors, her heels clicking against the polished concrete floor, completely unaware that she was about to discover a scene that would haunt the city for months to come. Her scream shattered the pristine silence. Sebastian Cross, Miami's most influential art critic, sat slumped in an antique velvet chair positioned directly in front of a massive abstract painting. At first glance, one might think he had simply fallen asleep while contemplating the artwork, but the crimson stain spreading across his expensive white shirt and the unnatural angle of his head told a different story entirely. Pinned to his chest was a handwritten note in elegant cursive. "Art is. Eternal critics are not." Detective Isabella Varga received the call while finishing her morning coffee in Little Havana. 23 years on the force had taught her to read between the lines of dispatch calls, and something about this one made her blood run cold. High-profile victim, possible homicide, media already gathering. Those weren't words that usually appeared together unless something truly sinister was unfolding. As her unmarked sedan pulled up to the gallery, she could already see the news vans lining the street like vultures. The killer, whoever they were, had chosen their stage perfectly. This wasn't just a murder, it was a performance, and Detective Varga was about to become an unwilling participant in someone's twisted game of fame and death. Detective Isabella Varga had built her reputation on understanding the minds of Miami's most dangerous criminals. Her colleagues often joked that she could read a crime scene like others read newspapers, but there was nothing amusing about the calculated precision she witnessed inside the Ashworth Gallery. The victim had been positioned with artistic care. Sebastian Cross's body faced the painting Metamorphosis in Blue, one of the gallery's most expensive pieces. His fingers were arranged to mimic the brushstrokes in the artwork, and a spotlight had been deliberately adjusted to illuminate both the painting and the corpse in dramatic fashion. "This isn't random," Detective Varga murmured to herself, photographing every angle. The killer had spent time here, moving freely through the space, arranging their grotesque tableau without fear of interruption. They knew the gallery's schedule, its security system, its blind spots. A shadow fell across the crime scene as Damien Ashworth, the gallery owner, appeared beside her. His face was pale, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. "I can't believe this has happened in my sanctuary," he whispered, his voice trembling with what appeared to be genuine shock. Sebastian was one of our most valued clients. He discovered so many of our artists. Detective Varga studied Ashworth carefully. Tall and lean with prematurely silver hair, he possessed the kind of refined elegance that came from years in Miami's high society. His hands shook slightly as he gestured toward the crime scene, and she noticed paint stains under his fingernails. An artist himself, perhaps. "When did you last see Mr. Cross alive?" she asked, watching his reaction closely. "Yesterday evening, around closing time. He said he wanted to spend more time with the new exhibition." Ashworth's eyes darted toward the note pinned to the victim's chest. "That message, it's like someone is making a statement about art criticism itself." As Detective Varga continued her examination, one thing became crystal clear. She was dealing with someone who understood both art and human psychology. The killer had turned murder into theater, and somewhere in Miami, they were probably watching the news coverage with satisfaction, already planning their next performance. 3 weeks passed in a blur of dead-end leads and mounting pressure from both the media and City Hall. Detective Varga had interviewed dozens of gallery visitors, art dealers, and rival critics, but the Sebastian Cross case seemed to exist in a vacuum. No obvious enemies, no clear motive beyond the killer's artistic statement. Then Vivian Sterling was found dead. The discovery occurred during one of Miami Beach's most exclusive charity galas, held in a waterfront mansion overlooking Biscayne Bay. Vivian, a prominent socialite known for her philanthropy and art collecting, had excused herself from the cocktail hour and never returned. When guests went searching, they found her in the mansion's private art room, posed as if she were the centerpiece of an elaborate installation. Her body was surrounded by mirrors, creating infinite reflections that seemed to multiply her death into a haunting kaleidoscope. Rose petals covered the floor, and classical music played softly from hidden speakers. A new note was pinned to her elegant evening gown. Beauty is temporary, art is forever. The scene was even more theatrical than Sebastian Cross's murder, and this time, the killer had an audience. Over 200 of Miami's elite had been present at the gala, any one of whom could have slipped away unnoticed during the festivities. Detective Varga arrived to find the mansion swarming with crime scene technicians and increasingly aggressive reporters. The local news channels had already dubbed the perpetrator the artist, and social media was exploding with theories about Miami's newest serial killer. "He's escalating," she told Captain Marcus Rodriguez as they stood overlooking the crime scene. "The first murder was private, discovered hours later. This one happened during a party with hundreds of potential witnesses nearby. He's getting bolder." Captain Rodriguez, a weathered veteran of Miami's police force, nodded grimly. "The mayor's breathing down my neck, Varga. 2 high-profile victims in 3 weeks. The tourism board is having a panic attack." As Detective Varga studied the mirror installation, she noticed something that made her pulse quicken. The positioning of the mirrors wasn't random. They were angled to create specific sightlines, forcing viewers to see the victim from multiple perspectives simultaneously. This wasn't just about killing, it was about controlling how the audience experienced the death. The killer wasn't just seeking attention, they were demanding it, orchestrating every detail to maximize the psychological impact on anyone who discovered their work. But in their hunger for spectacle, they were also taking greater risks, and Detective Varga intended to make sure those risks eventually caught up with them. Dr. Elena Mortensen arrived at Miami Police Headquarters carrying a thick psychological profile and an expression of grim fascination. The forensic psychologist had consulted on dozens of high-profile cases throughout her career, but the artist murders presented a unique challenge that both intrigued and disturbed her. "Your killer is a textbook narcissist with an acute need for validation," she explained to Detective Varga and Captain Rodriguez in the cramped conference room. "But unlike typical attention-seeking killers, this one possesses genuine artistic sophistication. They understand composition, symbolism, and most importantly, how to manipulate public perception." Dr. Mortensen spread crime scene photographs across the table like tarot cards. "Notice how each murder is staged for maximum visual impact. The killer isn't just communicating with law enforcement, they're performing for an audience they know will see these. Images through media coverage." Detective Varga studied the photos with renewed focus. "So we're dealing with someone who understands both psychology and art history." "Exactly, and that combination makes them extraordinarily dangerous." Dr. Mortensen pointed to the notes left at each scene. "These messages aren't random thoughts. They're carefully crafted statements about the relationship between art and mortality. Your killer sees themselves as making profound commentary on human nature." As if summoned by their discussion, Captain Rodriguez's phone buzzed with an urgent message. The Miami Herald had received an email from someone claiming responsibility for both murders. The message, sent from an untraceable account, read, "Critics and collectors alike fail to understand that death is the ultimate art form. I am merely helping them achieve immortality through my vision. The next performance will be even more spectacular." Detective Varga felt a chill run down her spine. The killer wasn't content to let their work speak for itself. They were actively courting media attention, feeding off the growing public fascination with their crimes. "He's escalating emotionally as well as practically," Dr. Mortensen observed after reading the email. "The direct communication with press suggests he's becoming addicted to the attention. That addiction will make him sloppy eventually, but it also means he won't stop until he's caught." Outside the conference room windows, Miami's skyline glittered in the afternoon sun, beautiful and deceptively peaceful. Somewhere in that sprawling metropolis, a killer was already planning their next masterpiece, driven by an insatiable hunger for fame that would ultimately become their downfall. The third victim shattered any remaining illusions about the killer's restraint. Marcus Delacroix, a wealthy art collector from Coral Gables, was discovered in his private study, arranged as if conducting an orchestra of death. His body was positioned behind a conductor's podium, arms raised in a final frozen gesture, while classical music played from speakers throughout the house. The note pinned to his shirt was longer this time. Like a symphony, each movement builds toward crescendo. The audience demands more, and I shall not disappoint. Detective Varga arrived at the Delacroix mansion as dawn broke over Miami, casting the crime scene in ethereal light that seemed almost designed for the killer's twisted aesthetic. The sophistication of the staging had reached a new level. Every detail, from the lighting to the music selection, demonstrated an intimate knowledge of both classical arts and human psychology. 3 victims, 3 different artistic themes, she murmured, walking through the study. Painting criticism, beauty installation, musical performance. Our killer isn't just educated, they're showing off their knowledge. Damien Ashworth appeared at her elbow, having arrived shortly after the police. His presence at each crime scene was starting to feel less coincidental and more purposeful, though his assistance had been invaluable in understanding the artistic elements of each murder. Marcus was a regular at the gallery, Ashworth said, his voice heavy with apparent grief. He purchased several pieces from our contemporary collection just last month. This monster is targeting our entire community. Detective Varga studied Ashworth's face carefully. His knowledge of each victim's art connections was remarkably detailed, almost as if he had maintained comprehensive files on Miami's art elite. You seem to know quite a bit about everyone's purchasing habits. It's my business to know, he replied smoothly. The art world in Miami is smaller than people think. We all know each other's preferences, investments, and collections. As the investigation continued, Detective Varga began mapping the connections between victims. All 3 had purchased artwork within the past 6 months, all moved in similar social circles, and all had been featured in local art publications. The pattern was becoming clearer, but the most obvious connection remained frustratingly just out of reach. Dr. Mortensen arrived later that morning, her expression more troubled than before. He's not just escalating, he's becoming methodical about it. The timing between murders is decreasing, but the complexity is increasing. He's approaching some kind of psychological climax. Detective Varga felt the weight of inevitability settling over the case. The killer was building towards something bigger, something that would make the previous murders seem like mere rehearsals. And somewhere in the maze of Miami's art world, all the clues she needed were hiding in plain sight, waiting for her to finally see what had been obvious all along. The breakthrough came not from sophisticated forensic analysis or psychological profiling, but from a mundane detail that had been staring Detective Varga in the face from the beginning. While reviewing the victim's financial records for the dozenth time, she noticed something that made her blood run cold. All 3 victims had purchased the same painting. Convergence in Red, by an obscure artist named Elizabeth Thorne, purchased by Sebastian Cross 6 months ago, by Vivian Sterling 4 months ago, and by Marcus Delacroix just 3 months ago. All 3 transactions processed through the same gallery, Ashworth Gallery. Detective Varga's hands trembled as she pulled up the gallery's sales records. The pattern wasn't just about the painting, it was about the timing. Each victim had purchased Convergence in Red and been murdered within weeks of acquisition. The painting was the connection, and Damien Ashworth was the only person who would have known about all 3 purchases. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The grieving gallery owner, the helpful art expert, the devastated member of Miami's cultural community, it had all been an act. Damien Ashworth wasn't just connected to the victims, he was selecting them. Racing to the Ashworth Gallery, as evening shadows lengthened across Miami's streets, Detective Varga found the front door unlocked and the lights dimmed for dramatic effect. She knew it was a trap, but she also knew that Ashworth's narcissism would demand a final performance, one last chance to explain his artistic vision before the curtain fell. She found him in the main exhibition space, standing before a new installation that made her stomach lurch. 3 easels held photographs of his victims, arranged like paintings in a gallery. Spotlights illuminated each image, while classical music played softly in the background. "Detective Varga," he said, without turning around, his voice carrying the cultured tones she now recognized as carefully constructed facade. "I wondered when you would finally see it. The connection was so beautifully obvious." "Elizabeth Thorne's painting," she said, keeping her weapon trained on him while reaching for her radio. "You knew everyone who bought it. You selected your victims based on who owned that specific piece." Ashworth finally turned, and the mask of grief and shock was completely gone. In its place was the cold satisfaction of someone who had orchestrated a masterpiece. Elizabeth Thorne was my grandmother, a brilliant artist who died in obscurity, while critics like Sebastian Cross dismissed her work as derivative, and collectors like the others treated her paintings as mere investments. So you killed them for revenge? I killed them for art. His voice rose to a theatrical pitch. Each death was a statement about the relationship between creator and critic, between artist and patron. I turned their deaths into something beautiful, something that would be remembered forever. Detective Varga kept her weapon steady as backup units surrounded the building. You made one mistake, Damien. You thought you were creating art, but you were just feeding your own ego. The connection to your grandmother's painting was so obvious that you couldn't see it yourself. As the handcuffs clicked into place, Ashworth smiled with genuine pleasure. But look at what I've accomplished, Detective. 3 perfect murders, each one more spectacular than the last. The media attention, the public fascination. I've become exactly what I wanted to be. Detective Varga met his eyes with cold certainty. You've become a cautionary tale about what happens when the hunger for attention becomes more important than human life.